All right. First, I want to talk about, has anybody had this pop up? This isn't passwords yet, but this is very important and very critical. Has anybody had something pop up and said, you know what? You're causing a problem on the internet. You've got a virus. Come on, nobody's had this? Nobody has had something pop up and said you need to call a number because you've got a problem.
Yes.
Yeah, I've had many of you call me about it already. So don't, it's safe here amongst this group. If you get this, it's a fake. It's FUD. It plays on your fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Now, if you were on a Windows computer, you would really, thinking it says Mac up there and all this. It's totally bogus. Do not call this 800 number. They just want your credit card number, okay? So do not call it. It's fake. It may look really, really important. I had somebody bring up here, they had an email today or yesterday that came from Apple support. It's not from Apple support. You hover over the little thing and it'll tell you if it's who it's from. Don't click on links if it says it's from your bank. These are all phishing expeditions. You can get a program, you can download a program, it's called Adware Medic. Unfortunately, they've changed the name now, but if you go to adwaremedic.com, it will take you to their website. So, let's see here. So, and it will run on your computer and scan for things called adware. Nothing can happen to your Mac. The only thing that can happen is they do what's called browser hijacking. They take over your browser and put all these pop-up ads and things like that try to get money from you. Or they're trying to get the little clicks on the ads. So don't be worried. Just take a couple deep breaths. Most of the time, you can do that 90% cure of restarting your computer and it'll be fine. All right, so we're here about passwords. Raise your hand if you've never had a problem with your passwords. Never, ever had a problem with your password? Come on up here and teach the class.
I listened to you, so I don't have problems.
Did you have a problem before you listened to me? Actually, most people have more problems after they listen to me. I'm sorry?
Only in how to remember some.
So you had a little bit of password issues. So is there anyone here that uses the same password everywhere? It's okay. You can tell us. Okay. So is this kind of our feeling with passwords sometimes? Now, luckily, the newer computers or the iPad are a lot lighter, so you don't hurt your foot as much when you kick it. But then, there's this. Now, today, with a little bit of work and a little bit of savvy and going and seeing Dr. Ken, Mr. Password, Dr. Password, you're going to be doing fine. You're going to be on Google. You're going to be on Cloud 9. Do you need to come closer?
I was looking for the password and I can't see it.
Oh, I'll read it out to you.
Okay. Thank you.
916. Let me know when you're ready. Everybody's waiting. Because you don't need to get on the internet, honestly.
Okay.
916-483. Somebody back there can read it to you. How's that? They can quietly read it to you. So, is there a reason why we shouldn't use the same password everywhere? Anybody give me some reasons?
If somebody steals it or gets it, then they can have access to all your account.
Yeah, the keys to the kingdom, it's pretty much the same thing everywhere. Well, you're very correct. But if we use the same password everywhere, we never have to write it down, right? I mean, you'd be pretty bad if you had a password that's easy to remember and you use it everywhere and you still forgot it. But as we get older, so I'm going to try help you with passwords today. The way I'm going to tell you is not the most secure way to do a password. If you want to do a very, 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 very secure password, you let Safari or you let your Apple device suggest a password. It's a virtually uncrackable password, but you will never remember it. What happens if you get a new device and things like that? And I'll explain later how we can make our passwords sync on all of our Apple devices, which is very handy. But in the near future, we're not going to worry about passwords, because we have a fingerprint. And I'll show you really quickly. Actually, I'll show you later. Remind me, please, before the break or right after the break, I'm going to show you how I can get into my Chase account and my American Express account with simply my fingerprint. And I can always remember my fingerprint. And I have 4 of my fingers in there just in case this one gets a little bit cut up or something. All right, so password frustration, I call it password hell. I'm sorry if that offends you, but it's so true to what it is. So, yes, use the same password everywhere. And what we're going to, first of all, when you have a base password, we want it to be something that's not in a dictionary. So MacNexus doesn't show up in a dictionary, okay? So I'm going to say, and I don't want you guys to use MacNexus 1, but I'm using this as an example. So I'm going to say use MacNexus 1 everywhere. Except what you want to do is you want to add a 2-letter prefix with a capital letter at the beginning. So, like this. If you put a capital 2 letters in the beginning, and those letters should correspond to where you're going to. If I'm at Amazon, it's capital A, lowercase m, MacNexus 1. Now, you only have to remember MacNexus 1, and you know you're at Amazon, so if you consistently do it the same way, you will never have to write it down, and you will never forget it. But I want to point out that it's, oh, there it went. Ooh. Is there a password to get into my laser? Ooh, yeah, I should look at it. That makes sense. Ooh, it all of a sudden worked. You know, it's funny, I have from when after my dad passed away, I went through and I found he had one of these good little, the extendable pointers. And I keep meaning to bring that to use at one of the classes because they're so classic, you know. There we go. So capital A, lowercase m. Now, let's talk about a couple reasons why this protocol works. Our keyboards on our Apple device is pretty easy. But think about your iOS devices where you have to flip keyboards and capital letters are pretty tough. So I always encourage you to make the first letter be the capital letter because then the keyboard automatically reverts to lowercase, correct? So you do lowercase letters for the rest of it. And then since we have to flip the keyboard to get to numbers, you make the number be at the end. Now, you could have 3 letters and 6 numbers. You could do whatever you want, but I encourage you to do it this way. Now, to make it slightly more secure, you could add a special character at the end. So, for very secure sites, you might do it, but be consistent with that special character so you don't have to remember it. Or, inevitably, if a site makes you change your password, you've forgotten it, and you reset it, they won't let you use the same password with within 6 months or a year, so just put a special character on the end usually. And be consistent with that, and then later on you can go back to it. But the key to this is being consistent with your protocol so you don't change it. Now, for instance, American Express might be a little bit of a problem. I could put AX, but that breaks my protocol. Don't do that. Use AM for American Express also, because it really doesn't matter if Amazon and American Express. The crossover you're going to have is not that bad. It's not like somebody's going to hack American Express and go, let's go get their Amazon account. The reason you don't want to have the same password everywhere is let's talk about, and I say the same MacNexus 1 password, not this derivation. Let's say you sign up for home delivery at Pizza Hut. Well, usually your username is your email address, right? So I put in my email address, and then I put in MacNexus 1 for my password. Well, late at night, the delivery driver knows he's about to get fired and he's a little bit of a hacker, and somehow he gets into the database and sees that KenSpencer@gmail.com's password is MacNexus1. So maybe he decides to see, well, maybe let's go into Gmail and see if that's also his Gmail password, MacNexus1. So the problem is your email needs to be your most sacred. And it's so important because it's the keys to the kingdom. Because if I have to reset my password, what do? They send me a reset code to my email address. And if somebody gets your email, it's crazy. Now, Gmail, Apple, many of these are now offering on their emails what's called 2-factor authentication. We won't really go into that, but if you're given that opportunity to do it, or in Google it can say, hey, we'll send you a text message if somebody's trying to get into your account. And let that happen, because your phone is a known device. It's a known phone number that's around, and it's not like the guy at Pizza Hut would have access to your text messages. So whenever you get that opportunity, do it. But remember, your email is very sacred. You can still use the same protocol for Gmail. It would be capital G, lowercase m. What do you think it would be for your Apple, like your Apple iCloud account? Capital A, lowercase p. Okay? No, just keep the protocol, the first 2 letters. That's, I mean, if whatever protocol you do, keep it consistent. So Netflix. And Wells Fargo. I have a tendency, before I really got smart about this protocol, I did use WF for mine, but I'm now doing anything new. Now, should you go out and change every password you have right now? No. But inevitably, you're going to forget the passwords you have at certain sites, so when you have to create a new password, if you use this protocol, it will help you immensely. Again, this is not the most secure way to do a password, but it's a lot more secure than writing it down on a piece of paper. Now, how many of you have iMacs? Okay, you know that little metal bar along the bottom? That's where your sticky notes for your passwords go right now, right? Okay. That's really secure. Or these companies that make people change their password every 30, 60, or 90 days. Well, that's also a problem, because we know that if Bob is out on vacation and somebody needs to get into his computer for something, they just look around in his desk for his password that's written down somewhere. So that's kind of another crazy thing that these IT guys think that is the best case scenario to do it. So anyway, any comments on this protocol so far? It seems to work pretty well for people that I have trying it. Again, I just caution you, it's not super secure, but it's pretty damn secure, because it's as good as any of the passwords you guys have already.
I used your last class, and I'm using it now, and it works really great. And somebody told me that if they have to change it every month, then that one at the end would be whatever.
Yeah. So if you do have to change it every month or every quarter or whatever, you can make a rotating suffix. So we have a prefix and we have a suffix. That's now, you didn't think you were going to be in an English class, right? And that's all I know about grammar. So it's just, you can change it at the end and you can correspond it, because by the time this quarter comes back around the next year, you're okay to do it again. Some places make you scramble it up a lot, but really that leads to people then doing it. We had a question here.
In your example, what if you like Amazon and American Express is AM?
I would use AM for both.
Oh.
Because if I break protocol, then I got to write it down. And realistically, if you think about it, the very few that are going to be the same, you could end up doing 3 letters if you wanted to give you a little more variety. I want to keep it simple so people will use it. But you can do derivations if you want. But if you stick with the process of capital letter first, make the prefix, however long it is, be where you're at. Because you don't want to make your passwords really long either, because when you make passwords really long, you're going to misenter them. Okay? So if you go along and you keep with it, whatever protocol you do, stick with that one. Okay? Now, if you go to kenspencer.com, I have a password sheet you can download where you can keep passwords on it and things like that. But to be honest, if you do this, you're not going to need to. Don't go out and change all your passwords. Only do it as you need to. There was a question back there somewhere?
Well, I do keep a cheat sheet, but what I do is that, I've got like equivalent to the MacNexus 1, which is not on my cheat sheet. But I will, if I went to Wells Fargo, maybe I'd have capital W, lowercase e, capital F, A, and that's what I write down.
That's fine.
Okay, so you don't.
Yeah, so that's okay. But remember, if you don't make your prefix real complex, I know if I'm at Amazon, it's AM.
Yeah.
I know if I'm at American Express, I know if I'm at Netflix, it's NE, capital N. I mean, always put the capital letter first. I do that because you don't want to go back and forth on it. But keep consistent with that. So it may or may not work for you. I hope it does. Everybody that I've had try it. Ironically, this came from one of my least techie clients who he would just he did it at the end. He would put like iTunes at the end or something like that. And it was like, I go, man, that's just genius. And so I tried it with it at the end, and then I got thinking about the numbers. And to me, when I make up passwords, I always thought about how I enter them on an iOS device where I flip back and forth between the keyboards, because inevitably you're going to blow that. So doing it this way, it lends itself, and it's very functional on the iOS keyboard.
Then I have another theory, Ken. For example, SMUD. I don't care if anybody knows my password to SMUD, and there's a few others that would go along with that. So I just have a different one that doesn't represent this. And if anybody found out that other one,
But
yeah, but if they ever figured out,
they won't. That's why I don't publish this anywhere. But Sarah, remember, if they figure it out, they still have to know your middle part. So you can do a throwaway password. But the problem is when you start having derivations, then you got to write it down. So the
this
problem.
other one I don't write down anywhere.
Well, again, that's your choice. This, I think, and again, you can play with the special characters, exclamation mark, $, etc. Go ahead, Joe. Well, I'm going to talk about keychain because that's important. And the thing is that many times if you're on a different device, you don't have keychain, because that's going to be part of what we're talking about, because that's a huge part of keychain. And the big part of today's class is talking about keychain, because everybody comes up with them. Thank you for the question. Okay, moving on. That's me. And let's see. So, keychain is our next thing. Now, I tried to do a graphic for this. There wasn't really any way to do it. So let me get, let's hide this. Actually, we'll hide this. And so, no, I didn't take this. I love this shot, though. I hope to take a shot like this someday. Anyway, so I get the call all the time about, well, first of all, I'm lucky because I remember things pretty well. And I even have clients call me and ask me what their password is. And then, of course, I sit there and go, well, I can remember it. Should I let them know that I remember it? And, well, if they're in trouble, okay, I'll risk it. And, and that's the problem with passwords is it really, it's just, and you may be somewhere not at your desk when you have to create a new password for somewhere else. So Apple's got some stuff. Now there's password managers out there. There's LastPass, there's Dashlane, there's 1Password and stuff. I don't use those because Apple has a great built-in solution that has this much learning curve. Is there anybody that hasn't gone to a website and put a password in at one time and had it in Safari? Now, is there anybody here not using Safari? Where was that gentleman? Okay. Why not?
Because it's not compatible with some of the programs that I'm running on my old Mac.
Oh, so you're not into how old is your Mac? Mac kind of old.
Oh, I have a Mac that is pre-Intel.
Okay.
Used for,
but that's not one you use for. That's not your daily driver, right? Or you have an iPad? No, it's okay. So okay. So.
It depends on whether
All
I'm
right.
at work or if I'm at
You
home.
can use, if you need a compatible browser, go ahead and use Google Chrome. It will store things in your keychain for you. But Safari, okay, let's go back to it. Is there anybody that hasn't gone to a website and had it ask you if you want it to remember your password? Okay, everybody's seen that little screen? Anybody here says no? Who doesn't let you do that? Why?
I don't understand it, I'm afraid of it.
Good answer. You're afraid of it, okay? Fear of the unknown. Hopefully I'll cure that today. Any other reasons why you wouldn't do it?
I don't do it in case somebody gets a hold of my computer.
Okay.
I'm not in a particularly secure neighborhood at my office.
Okay. Good question, or good answer. Any others? What?
I said same as hers.
Are you been looking in her window and seeing her computer? Is that...
I just don't like to leave them hanging around.
Okay.
Sometimes I'm thinking I know the password, so I check not now. And then
Okay.
if I get into the system.
Good way. I do that. If I'm not sure, I say not now, or I let it load behind the scenes. So let's talk about the not too sure about the neighborhood. Is your computer locked with a password?
It is, but People are pretty damn crafty.
Okay.
And, you know.
So let's talk about that for a second. So if your computer's locked with a password, they would need your password to get in there. But us that do Apple tech a lot, we know that people lose their password to their computer. So there are ways for us to go in and reset your password for your computer. But you can never get into your keychain. So let me explain the keychain for a second. Let's say that, actually this might be let's picture here at St. Mark's. There's all these rooms. And let's pretend that each room has a unique key to the door. There's no master key. So each room, this is E25 or 6, E20, everyone has its own key, where keys are passwords. Down in the office, inside the administrator's office, there's a box on the wall with a key to every room, right? And it's locked with a special key. So if the janitor doesn't have his ring of keys, you know, you got the big old ring of keys, if he didn't have it and he needs to get into E25, he would go down and find an administrator. The administrator would go to the key box and get E25 and give it to him, and he could unlock E25, correct? So that's the equivalent of the keychain inside your Apple device, not just the Mac, iPhone, iPad. What it is it's the repository of your passwords. And the way those passwords get there, it's magic. You simply say, okay, save my password. Those of you that use Apple Mail, you know, you don't have to enter your password every time you go in to check your mail, right? What a pain in the butt that would be. But what I said is, you go down to the office and it's locked in the box, and the administrator has to get the key to open that box. So what happens is, on all your devices, your passwords are stored in the keychain, and the keychain can only be gotten into with your user password, essentially the manager's key. On your iOS device, it would be the button that unlocks your screen, or if you have a 4-digit code. So there's this, always we run this gamut of convenience and security. I can make sure it doesn't keep any of my passwords, and then I have to enter it every time, and believe it or not, you're almost as vulnerable to somebody looking over your shoulder or somebody listening in. If you were on a PC, this would be terrible because they could do your key codes. You know, they can see what you type. It can't happen on a Mac. But you're still kind of vulnerable. But the idea is that if you don't want it to say, like you mentioned, SMUD, no big deal if somebody gets into your SMUD account. Let them pay your bill for you. That's one that you could store and have no problem. If you're concerned about your bank information, most bank sites don't let you store the password. They are more and more. But if you'll notice, that's why Apple is making you have a very secure password for your Apple ID, and they're requiring passwords on your computers and things like that. Now, what they're doing is saying, if you want us to store more of your secure stuff, we're going to make sure you have some security going into it. It's your choice whether you want to let it store your password for bank sites and things like that. The way the law works is, let's say they got into your, let's say it's at your bank. This doesn't apply if you have a business account, because business accounts don't have the same consumer protection that consumer accounts do. But if you have a personal account, if you are prudent about protecting your information, you're never liable for anything that happens. Okay? And having things locked up in a password, etc., would be considered prudent in that regard. So that's just kind of how it's a mess if it happens. But you know, there's plenty of ways these other people can hack in and things like that. I opt for security. Now, that being said, I probably access it more on my iOS device, and more because I can use my fingerprint reader. They can get my phone all they want, but they don't have my password to my account because it doesn't remember it. I have to enter it each time, or I use my fingerprint. So that's where the fingerprint reader is going to make it better. They're also working one bank uses voice recognition because all of us have a special voice pattern, and you would say a certain word and it reads the voice pattern. There's also doing facial recognition now. So those are coming up. We're going to not, in 5 years, we won't be talking about passwords because they will be a thing of the past, and thank God. Because it's the call I hate to get, but it's the call I get the most. And it really is a problem. I know our Apple IDs, everything else. But you have to remember that the reason they require extensive passwords, and part of the reason we did so here's what Apple's requirement is on a password. At least one capital letter, at least one number, at least 8 characters, and no character can repeat more than twice in succession. So you couldn't put 333. You could put 33. So those are pretty good protocols, and that's kind of a standard, but then you've got these weird outliers like, weird sites. It's like these sites you don't care. Kind of not like SMUD, but some of the others, it's like, well, you got to have this and that. Why are you making it so damn bloody secure? It's like, what are they going to get? It's like the library or something. So, yes.
I'm having a little problem with my keychain. I have to keep putting in the password at once, and I assume that's to the big administrator box or whatever. But when that started happening, all of a sudden, all my important accounts are being populated with the password, like my bank and everything. I can't get it to not do that.
You would go into the keychain and delete that from your keychain. Okay? So I'm going to show you how to go into the keychain, but I'm going to ask you all to take a pledge, hold up your hand, and say, Ken, if you, come on, repeat after me. Ken, if you show me how to do keychain, I promise to make it read only, and I won't modify it. Now, we've got you on record, so if you ever call me and say, Ken, I got into my keychain and I changed something. No. Treat keychain as a read only. Let's talk about our little scenario of the rooms. So, if they come up and they change the lock to E25, they have to give the janitor a new key for his ring, and they have to take one down and put it in the key box down there. But let's just say willy-nilly the janitor says, well, we need a new lock in E25, so he goes over to Amy Hardware over here and just brings a new key. Is that going to work? No. So just don't bring any old key. Don't go into keychain and try to manage your keychain. Your keychain, treat it as read-only, okay? I wish there was a way we could make it so you could read it and that's all, but you can actually modify it. But please, please, please don't. Let Apple handle it for you. I'm only showing you how to get into your keychain as a way for you to find your passwords. Okay? So, I just hit the magnifying glass in the upper right, and I go into Spotlight and I start typing KEYC. There's keychain access. So I hit return, and this is this not too user-friendly just window that pops up. Now, it'll usually be on login and it'll be on passwords. And if you'll notice, I have 415 items in my keychain. Okay, that's fine. I don't care how many are there. I love that there's a lot there. So let's do this. Let's go in. See, I have passwords from a client's Wi-Fi when I'm logged in and things like that. But we know this one is like E25. So I'm searching for E25, right? That's the Wi-Fi here is E25 is the password. So if you look at this shows me, I just filtered this. So let's go back to that. I have all 415 passwords. If I want to find out what my Twitterific password is, actually Comcast, I don't use it anymore. So if I go to Comcast, see, there it shows the Comcast one. If I go to Gmail, see, it starts showing where I've used a Gmail, like on my Mint account. Oh, plug share. Okay, that shows there. So I'm filtering it down. But let's just, because I want to show the Wi-Fi here so we don't have to expose any of my passwords, I hit E25. So you can see here. Now, there are different ones on the right-hand side you'll notice. Don't use system because it's hard to get into. iCloud means this is the password that's going out to all my devices and stored on the cloud, which I'll talk about in a second. But you'll notice logins, okay? So, if I go, these were actually a year ago, so I'm going to have to use the new one because we did change the password in here. So if I highlight the iCloud one and double click on it, a little window comes up. Now, this window, normally it would show you like what your username is. If you have 3 Gmail accounts, it would list your Gmail account. But if I go here, well, my password's still not here, right? The only place I'll let you ever type in here is where it says comments, and you don't need to. You can say, oh, this is the greatest password I've ever invented, and I really love this password. But if I click show password, watch what happens. Oh, better go get the manager so I can open the key box. Sorry, you can't get in the key box without the manager's password. So I put in my login password for my computer, which is a fairly simple password. And there it shows me what the password is stored in the keychain. Now, in the case of someone getting your computer, or like me, let's say you've lost your login password to your computer and I have to reset your login password. A new keychain would have to be created that would not be populated at all. There is no way at all, ever, no one can, not even Apple, get in and open your keychain if they don't have your actual password for your keychain. So it's very secure. Very, very secure. Okay?
So that's the password that is when you turn on the machine that you enter.
Yes, if you have that set to log in. Your login, your user password, some of you people don't have that, so you would just simply hit login password and hit return, or it'll take you right to it. But if you're starting to save any secure passwords, that's why I encourage you to have a login password on your computer. And once you have a login password on your computer, there'll be a login password for your keychain, and they're the same. Okay?
Okay, and so how, if I don't, on my home machine, I don't have that set right now.
And I do on this user, but not on the others. And frankly, Apple forces you, if you install now, to have a password. There's ways to get around it, but it forces you to put a password in. Because look at it this way. If I decide not to put a password in, and all of a sudden my machine gets hacked and it makes news, it's Apple's fault, right? Instead of my fault for not having a password there. But that's what they're protecting. They're basically trying to institute some protections to protect you from yourself, because unknowingly you don't realize the vulnerabilities that might be there. Now, remember you're on a Mac, so nobody can sit there and listen, nobody can watch anything. You know what was really funny in PCs when they do these things called keyloggers, what the suggestion was for people was to make a little notepad with your password on it and copy and paste it in, because the keystroke is Control-C, Control-V, and it pastes the password in. They never see the password if you had a keylogger. But this is just such a great solution to it, because, as I'll show you in a minute, it shows up on my iPad. Go ahead,
So if
follow
I
up.
don't have that turned on on my home machine, I don't have that. Well, I don't have it. It turns on and it's booted up.
Then what you may or may not have, you may have it so it's automatically set to log in. So the way to test it is try go in and see a password and see if it requires. Try open a password and see if it requires you, because you may still have. You can turn on what's called automatic login, where it bypasses your password, and you may have that, but then you'll need to know what your password is,
So
and
how
that's.
would I turn it off? How would I make it so that I have to have the password?
So you basically you go into System Preferences, and one way to check if you have it, click on Users and Groups,
Oh, okay.
and there's a little padlock at the bottom here. If I click the padlock, and if I had no password, I could just click Unlock, but I do have one. And then what happens is when you go to Login Options, you can tell it to automatically log in here, and it requires your password that one time. But that's getting a little deep in there. But feel free to Google it, or you can send me an email.
Okay.
So, but again, if you've got a website that you really don't want the password saved at, you always have to say not now or never for this website when it goes to save a password. Okay, there was a Charles.
So, keychain for my iMac phone, my iPad has the same keychain.
If you have iCloud Keychain turned on, which I'm going to go to in just a minute, I wanted to first explain how Keychain works. So please ask me if it's not clear how this keychain works. Go ahead.
I have one follow-up now. So it's on everything. Which password do I use? For the machine or for
So the password to get into the keychain, remember, we're not talking about your Amazon password. We're talking about going down to the manager and having them open the box for you. Your password for your computer is what gets you into it here. On your iOS device, it's your login. You know, most of you have 4 digits. That is how you get into it. You don't really, quote, get into your keychain on your iOS device. I'm going to show you how you get into Safari on it. But the beauty of it is, you know, back in the day, we used to always migrate the data in. Well, I can do a clean install of somebody now. And the best part was, you know, of doing a migration is all your passwords would come over from your old machine. Well, now they're stored, if you have iCloud Keychain, they're stored in the cloud. And look, Apple's cloud, Apple's iCloud, where the keychain is the safest, most secure, most private place it can be. Nobody gets in there. It's just so secure. Don't sweat it. That's more secure than sitting on your devices, to be honest. So that should be of no worry to you. If you're paranoid, if you think the sky is falling, and you take your car home, you park it in your garage, and then you take your key out of there and you take it up to the safe deposit box and put it in the bank, so if anybody wants to steal your car, they have to go break into the bank and steal your key. You can lock things really down if you want, but you really don't need to go that far, okay? Again, you're protected on your bank, and they might order a Pizza Hut pizza on your account. So that's always the old college thing. You order pizzas for somebody and they don't know it. Okay, so a keychain is the repository of your keychain. Now let's talk about this for a second. We were talking about Amazon earlier. If I go to Amazon and I have to create a new password, I create the new password inside Amazon. I forget keychain for a minute. Forget everything you know about keychain and remember your pledge, okay? You forget about keychain right now. If I go to Amazon, whenever I go to Amazon, it's going to autofill for me. It gets that information from the keychain. But if I change my password in Amazon, I go into Amazon, change my password, and then I'm in Amazon. But what I encourage everyone to do, if you change your password, wherever it is, log out immediately, sign out or log out, and immediately log back in while the password is fresh in your mind. Come on, you can remember that long, or write it down on with invisible ink and let it go away. Log back in, and then it'll say, do you want me to save this new password? Or it'll say, update password. Hey, you have a new password. Do you want me to store it in the keychain for you? And you say yes, because otherwise it will autofill the old password. It'll look good, and we've all been there. Well, it says it's my password. It's 6 dots, right? Well, okay, just let it refill. So you log in, change your password, and let's talk about this in the real world. Let's say at your house, you need to have the locks changed, and there's 4 people that live at your house. So let's say there's 5 people that live at your house, and you only want 4 people living at your house. So you have the locks changed. You have the locks changed, and now the locksmith gives you 4 sets of keys. Well, you've got 1 set of keys, and you give the other 3 to the 3 people you want, and you don't give a key to the 5th person. That key no longer works in the locks, right? But you've had to update your key change with these other people and given them keys. Now, people always wonder, well, if I change my password at Amazon, does it affect my mail? Well, that's the same thing as changing the locks at your house and assuming that the locks in your car have changed. They haven't. It's all independent. 1 password does not affect everything, okay? But the important part here is, if you change the password at Amazon, log out, log right back in with your new password, and tell it to save it and update your password, okay? Then it updates the keychain. Don't go into the keychain, remember you made a pledge, and change it there. Because inevitably you're going to mistype it. And you don't need to do that. Let Apple do the heavy lifting for you. And then the beauty is it trickles down to your iOS devices.
And why doesn't it update that as soon as you change the key? Why do you have to come out and go back in?
You don't have to always, but on some websites it's just important to. Because what happened is, it's a good question. So what happens... So if I go to Amazon, it's going to autofill. And then I get into Amazon and I go change my password. I'm already in Amazon. I haven't gone to the front page to enter Amazon, because as soon as I'm in Amazon and I change it, I've entered under my old password, I'm still in Amazon, and that's why I say log out and re-enter Amazon. It's going to autofill your old password, type in your new password, and then re-log in. You're re-entering, so it's prompting it again because it's only that home page, only that login page that requires your password. It's a good question. Does that make sense? Please, this is important. So if you're not following along, stay after class. And if not, I'll refund your money. All right. So if we go, so that's the keychain, and the keychain resides inside your Mac. And the beauty is, I have this and I have an iMac, and the keychains propagate to one another, and they constantly update. So if one device had an older password, and I've got iCloud Keychain on, it goes there. Now let me show you where iCloud Keychain is. If we go to System Preferences, we go mysteriously enough to iCloud, and there's something down here called Keychain. Now, yours can be off or it can be on. If you turn it on, and there's no harm in turning it on because you're just going to let it propagate to all your devices. So, what happens is, and I'm not going to do it because I don't want to reset my iCloud keychain, but your phone is one where Apple really knows. Anybody here not have an iPhone? Okay. iPad? Okay. So it'll work the same to your iPad, but it's where the phone is a little bit better because it knows your phone number. So what happens is, if I turn on iCloud Keychain, it'll say, first it's going to ask you for your Apple ID password. And believe it or not, we've talked about Keychain all we want, and most of the time, your password won't get filled in for your Apple ID because the Apple ID really holds a lot of value. So the whole idea is you do have to put your Apple ID password in many times. When you refresh your system, many times it'll be 8 times in there. It doesn't autofill, and the reason is for security reasons. Because if someone got into your iCloud account, like happened with one of these celebrities that had an easily cracked password, it wasn't that Apple wasn't secure, it was the problem is people knew this person's dog's name and what their address was, is what their password was based on. So you will not be able to do it for most of the Apple sites, but you'll go ahead and you'll put it in, and once you do it, it'll then go on this device or your other device, say, oh, do you want to use iCloud Keychain? And you have to approve it from the other device and enter your Apple ID. And you'll do it a couple times back and forth. There is another way to use what's called a security code. So you could use a 4 or 6 digit number that you really like that you could repeat on all of it. Go ahead.
I don't know how this happened, but my password to get into my computer started, and my Apple ID are exactly the same.
Yeah, so that's an option they do now, is when you first log in on your computer, you have the option of making your, well, 2 ways. You can have a regular login password, but it can be reset if you know your Apple password, which is good because they were getting a lot of problems with people not remembering their login, because mostly like in yours where you log in all the time, you may have had a password at one time, and that was set up so long ago before you started having to write down passwords that you may forget what it is, or maybe somebody at Best Buy set it up, the Geek Squad, somebody like that, or at the Apple Store. So you may not remember what that password is. So you can do that if you'd like, and it's quite good because then you can also reset it via your Apple ID. So that's been added only recently. Prior to that, it's standalone. You can still use a standalone because my Apple ID is a little bit longer, my password. And I use my protocol I had a very simple Apple ID. I had KSPENC, right? For years, and I could have kept it with that, but because there's so much in my Apple now, I use my protocol. So anyway, so the keychain, I'm going to show you where it is on your iOS device. God, this big cursor's cumbersome. Great. So if you go into settings, and this will be the same on the iPad and the iPhone, on the iPod Touch, which there were some new iPods introduced 2 weeks ago. It was pretty amazing. So if I click on iCloud, then you go down here and here's Keychain. And if I tap Keychain, You can see mine is on. So yours would be off, and when you turn it on, it's going to ask you for it. And what it'll do is it'll meld and merge all of your passwords. And if it was, say, let's say it was Amazon, and you had a newer password on your computer that wasn't here, it would say, oh, that's the newer password. Let's merge them. Let it do all the heavy lifting for you. Now, since we can't get in and see our passwords in here, I'm going to show you where, because most of these are in Safari, but also there are some apps like my Chase account and things like that where it stores it. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you where your passwords are stored primarily. And by the way, like the Wi-Fi here, it just remembers it here. It just remembered that my Mac was connected to this Wi-Fi, and it puts that password in. But if I go into my settings, go down to Safari, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but right here, passwords and autofill. And if I go here, I actually have it store my credit cards also. I'd rather have my Apple device store my credit card number and fill it in for me, minus the security code, than have it stored at some place's website. Because they're likely to get hacked. I'm not likely to get hacked. So if I go here to names, saved passwords, oh, well, I'm sorry, you better go get the manager. We need the manager's key if you want to do this. So I put in my code. And now I can go here and let's look for, wow, reservation, Almsboro. Wow, I don't know what that is. So this will be pretty safe. Oh, not that one. Okay, so there it shows my password. And only because it would normally ask me for my login code as I show each, well, actually I'll show you on here. So since I did my login code, it would, if I hadn't put in my login code, it would have never let me there. Let's look for another one. Wow, okay. So anyway, that's where your passwords are stored in Safari. But like for your apps and stuff, you won't be able to see that. Okay, let me show you fingerprint reader in the Chase app. Oh, let's. Try the phone here. Oh, so my phone's showing up on the MacNexus Apple TV in somebody's class right now, unfortunately. Luckily, I didn't have it on mirroring. God, that great. They're sitting there writing down passwords, right? No. So if I go in, I'm going to go to my Chase app. So actually, I'll use American Express. I tap my Amex app, and now, yeah, I hope it works because it's just been updated. Oh, look at that. It says, look, we know you don't have to fill in your password. You simply, Chase does it. There's a few others now. Amazon, I don't use the app on here. Amazon does. I wish Wells Fargo would hurry up and do it. But if your banks aren't doing it now, they'll do it. Now, your fingerprint is super secure because it's stored in a secure enclave on your phone that even if they transplanted it out of your phone and put it in a different phone, it would be null and void. It also doesn't work if you cut somebody's thumb off and try to use it because it does detect live skin because it's a capacitive discharge, so it senses that it's a live thumb you put on there. That's very, 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 very safe. Okay? So, and what I recommend people when you set up your Touch ID, if like I have my thumb most of the time, but when I'm in my car, I have a mount right there, and I just can touch with my finger, and I use a second finger for that. But I've done all 4 of these. But if you have trouble, some people have trouble with the digit that they're using. In fact, I'll show you right now. We have time before the break. I'm going to go into Touch ID on the phone, and Touch ID and passcode, and it wants my passcode. Now, if you watch, I'm going to rest my thumb on here, and you'll see it goes dark. See how it goes dark? That means it's learning more of the data of my thumb. So I can take my thumb and lift it up and down, and roll it farther. So it's capturing more of the data of my thumb. But what happens, you have to start from where it knows it. You can't just roll it. You go tap, 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 tap. And if it stops going gray, it's not learning it, so you got to go back to where it knew, and it will learn more of your thumb. Also, if we go like this, I'm upside down, right? I'm going to put my thumb on it. It detects it 360 degrees. Okay? So it's really, really handy. Now, if you have one you use a lot and you're having trouble, set it up and use the same finger twice on here. So finger 1 and finger 5 would be the same digit, because it'll make it so it just learns it more and you'll have less issue coming out. Has anybody had trouble with Touch ID? Did it finally learn it for you?
I learned that I had to do it kind of a half angle.
So then go back and teach it. Go in here and just rest it on it and just let it learn more and more of the data, because you got to remember that. And of course, that little icon up there is just a representation of a fingerprint. It's not your real fingerprint. Okay, I use it for Apple Pay. Anybody here who's used Apple Pay? You love it? So you talk about security. It's the most secure way you can do a credit card transaction. So actually, since we have about 2 minutes before it, I'll talk about security. Has anybody here gotten their new chipped cards yet with the chip in them? The rest of you will probably have them by October. So the way the chip works is, it's a little smart chip on the bottom of your card, and you slide it in and it stays in the reader. And the beauty of it is, it creates a one-time use number that then gets transmitted for the transaction. So by creating a one-time use number, if there's a hacker sitting there and listening and trying to get your information, they're going to get this one-time use number that, guess what's already been used. So it's of no value to them, and that number doesn't tie back to you in any way at all. The old way was you swipe your card and your credit card number along with other information gets transmitted over the lines. So this way, you're going to have a very secure transaction. Apple Pay does the exact same thing. When you use Apple Pay, it creates a one-time use number and transmits that over the system. And it's faster than using the chipped card. It's wicked fast. It really is, and it's very safe and very secure. And the beauty of it is, like I have the American Express app on here, so when I make a charge, it shows, I get a little notification. It's not a text. I get a little notification that shows me the charge. So like when I go to a restaurant, they'll run your card when they bring it back to your table prior to the tip. So I see that it's already been charged. In fact, it's funny because it shows up before the girl's back with, or the server, excuse me. The server is back with the receipt. So it's pretty amazing. Then you sign it. You don't get another notification right away, but it shows up. And the best part is you can go back and then you can see your most recent charges. So actually, if we go to the Amex app again, actually it's in Passbook. So if I go to Passbook, which is where my credit cards are, wow, oh, there it is. So there was Red Robin. I had a salad there last night. So if I hit the I, and that's a little slow, there's other transactions. So it's great, and that's right in Passbook. You have to have the American Express app to do it. Eva?
So can I just put my credit card on Passbook?
Uh-huh.
I haven't used it yet. And then now
Better hurry.
and now you're showing that, because I was thinking, how am I going to see my register from what I've charged? Do I have to get the bank's app on?
No, so you should be able to see it. So most of those charges weren't done with Apple Pay. In fact, that Red Robin charge was not in Apple Pay. That's just the way Passbook works is I have the American Express app on my phone, and you really need to have that. Actually, you don't have to do it, but it's got a relationship with the bank, so it comes in and shows you what's recent charges there. So Passbook is kind of just an aggregator where you can have your Chase card, your Wells Fargo card, and all that. In fact, Passbook's really cool. When I book on Southwest now, well, let's finish your question. So it'll show up here. I think it'll do it even if you don't have the Amex app.
If I just put on US Bank,
Yeah.
US Bank, and I haven't called them to verify,
Right, some of the ones you do.
And then I'm thinking, because I was gonna charge.
Well, go in right now, since you don't, do you have the US Bank app on your phone?
I don't have the US.
Okay, do me a favor, go into Passbook and see if your previous charges show up. It'll be there, and then hit the I.
Okay, well,
Oh,
I haven't done it yet. Tomorrow is when I'm gonna use it for the first time.
okay. Well, no, but you put it in there already.
I do have it in there.
Right, put it in there. It showed me things that weren't Apple Pay, so I just wonder if it's going to show your most recent charges. So,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
so Passbook also holds when I go to Southwest and I book a flight now, you have the option of the little QR code saving it. And what's really cool is I can save it right into Passbook, and when I get to the airport, the GPS senses I'm at Sacramento International Airport, and it pops up with that QR code. Even better than that, that shows up here. I can give that to TSA. Keep your fingers turned in. Don't. Show that to TSA as long as with the ID, and then when I go on the plane, I can use the QR code right here on the phone or on the watch. It works great on the phone too. You don't have to print a paper ticket. So we'll check that during the break. Thank you. Oh, got to stop recording. Remind me after the break to please start the recording.